Hello, everybody. Let's see, is this live?
Yep.
Okay. So, yes, all the people in the audience here should move up to the front so they can. But we have a good assortment online remotely. So this is the MANET working group. Uh, I'm Donald Eastlake from Future Way, and I have my left Don Vedek Flavin, and to right Ronald Infeld from DNO. We are the co-chairs, and I need to, let's see, what do I want to do here okay, next slide. Note well, you've probably seen this before, but if not, the discussions here are governed by the the IETF, sorry. Yeah, not I have given this a similar thing for IEEE meetings, but not here. These various documents here explain in detail the standards process and the IPR rules. In particular, generally speaking, if you're aware of any IPR in anything being presented or anything you, particularly anything you present, but even if other people are presenting, you should make that known. And if it's something for you or your employer, then you have to make it known. Um, People should go off and look at those documents when they have the time to do so. Next slide.
So
Uh,
just made an audio check. Charlie said
oh, sorry. Is there?
he can't hear.
Yes. Can remote people hear me talk?
There's a bit of delay, so just give it a
Sure.
second.
Sure.
They
Okay.
can hear. Yeah.
Some people.
Okay.
I can speak closer to the microphone if that helps. Uh, second note well page on a different topic that people should play well with each other. Various IETF meetings, virtually and physical, and mailing lists are all intended for professional collaboration and networking. There are various guidelines of conduct, and there is an anti-harassment policy. Creates the IETF strives to create and maintain an environment in which people of many different backgrounds and identities are treated with dignity, decency, and respect. So basically, if you have suspect any problems with this sort of thing, you can obviously bring it to our attention as chairs if it's within the SMENA sphere, or you can go to the Ombuds team, which I believe is accessible through the IETF homepage and stuff like that. And they can probably assist you. Next slide. Just a reminder that the way IETF produces quality documents is through their review. Uh, and basically, people are always welcome to review documents and comment on them, particularly drafts that are going through or being considered by the working group. And if you know, it's also good to review other documents you might be interested in that are outside our working group, and it encourages more widespread review of our documents. Next slide, I guess. So, meeting tips. You need to have signed in, although I think everybody who's remote must have necessarily done that. Um, so anyway, yeah. Anyway, you have to use Mineco. I think IETF does the best job of any organization I've seen in treating people who are physically present and those who are remote equally, because they both get in the same queue to get on the microphone and stuff like that. Uh, and you should keep, obviously auto feed and video feed off if you're not uh, actually presenting or whatever, or talking. Um, Using headsets is strongly recommended if you're remote. Previous session I was in just before this, there was some problem with echoing because of a remote participant without headsets. Uh, Next slide. Should I go ahead with the agenda?
Yes.
Okay. Uh, so here we are, and depending on where you are in the world, the time is different. But anyway, it's the right time, and this is the agenda for our meeting. So we're going to check that the agenda is the right thing. We need people to take minutes. Minutes can be done collaboratively. There's a link in the agenda for minutes taking, and chairs will review them and post them afterwards. We will review the status of documents and our milestones. We have two topics to talk about. One is AODV V2. Charlie Perkins will speak on that. We have slides for that. And the other is charter revision. We have been considering a charter revision for a while, and we still have not really, I don't think, come to closure on what we would like to see in our charter, our new charter. What items should be added and what items should be dropped. So we are continuing that discussion at this meeting as well, and then we will wrap up.
Yes, and now I take over with some sad news. David Wiggins, who has been a participant, not really a participant coming to IETF meetings, as far as I can remember, but somebody who was a co-author of the drafts that we will shortly speak about, and also an implementer of DLAB in an open source implementation of DLAB done by MIT Lincoln Labs, has passed away in November last year after a long period of illness. Of course, we are sad about this. I can imagine that his co-authors of the drafts are most affected by this. But yeah, we join them in mourning the loss of David, and he shall be missed. Then about those drafts that he co-authored after a long period. I won't go into all the reasons for that. We are finally at the stage that we are about to hand them over to our area director and the wider IESG. And yeah, although that does not mean that they will be published very soon, because there may be all sorts of discussions still to be resolved. They're at that point more or less out of the working group, unless the changes that need to be made are so substantial that they need to come back to the working group to gain consensus on that. I am the document shepherd, so I think I will be helping the remaining authors, I now have to say, with resolving any issues that come up during IESG review. Then we have some individual drafts that have been adoption called twice, actually. There were not many opinions voiced about adoption, but there were no opinions against adopting them. I think they can be useful. We received guidance from our AD that we should not take on any new work before the previous set of documents was out of the working group. We are at that stage now. So maybe Jim, you can make a comment on that, but as soon as we, do I understand correctly that as soon as we have handed over the previous drafts, that we can consider these adopted as working group documents? Or?
So looking at the, I mean, I haven't read the documents yet, but they're DLEP related. So as far as I'm concerned, you know, this isn't, I wouldn't consider this as new work per
No.
se. It's more, if it's related to those documents that are going to come to me very shortly, then I'm okay for you to go ahead and adopt these and continue the work on that, because it's basically within the same area. My comment before was I don't want to see any new work taken on in terms of new charter items
Okay.
until such time as we see movement of what we've already got, and you know the reasons behind that. So in summary, I'm happy for you to go ahead and adopt these now and continue to work on those and send me the other ones, and then once we're at that stage, then we can you know, if there's enough stuff for a recharter of the working group, then we can certainly do that. I just didn't want to do a recharter until I saw progress on what we already had.
Understandable.
Yep.
But these three documents are fully covered by the current charter because they are DLEP extensions, and that's a charter right. Oh, this what do I do? Okay, Abdul Salam, go ahead.
Yes, I've read the documents, the three documents, and I have commented on it before, and I accepted the adoption for it for some time, but I would like to know if there's, as you said, if there's somebody against these documents, they should have commented, but there was no any against these documents. So I think only there was a comment from the AD before saying that it's short. You know, the comment was that short, needs more details, and I think maybe still it's not that more details, and it will be updated in the future, I think, as the author mentioned. Thank you.
Yes, but adoption as working group documents is the beginning of something, not the end of something. So
Yeah, I was going to make the same comment. You know, if there's really no issue with adopting the document because you know, it's got to go through the whole process and go through working group, last call, and so forth. So hopefully that work that you're talking about in terms of fleshing out detail will happen, obviously, as part of that process. So I see no reason to, you know, to delay. If the working group has consensus on adoption, I don't see a reason to delay that.
And then finally on document status, we now have a new version of the AODV version 2 draft that Charlie Perkins is going to present shortly. And I've seen that there is a new version of the STURP draft that was presented in San Francisco. However, I think, was it you, Donald, or Don, that sent out a request for presentations on the mailing list? And we did not receive a reaction from the authors of that draft. So whether they feel that they need to do another update, or I apologize for not checking with them, but no. Okay. Yeah, Abdul Salam, go ahead.
Regarding this draft, we've read the draft, but it needs more update or adjustment. There was comments from Henning and comments that needs to be answered. So it's already open for to update. the concerns of the working group.
I've seen comments from Henning and others on the 0.0 version of the draft. However, I have not seen any comments on the 0.1 that was published somewhere in January, if I remember correctly. Okay. New slide deck. Charlie, are you ready? Charlie? Do I need to mute him?
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Can you hear me?
Yes. Can you hear us?
Okay. I'm here. Can you hear? Okay, so I'm ready to roll. Sorry. I'm sort of afraid to just go around randomly pushing buttons, but I guess that's what you have to do. Anyway, yeah, so I'm here to talk about AODV. Should I get started?
Yes, floor is yours.
Okay. Well, next slide, please. I'm going to talk a little bit about how AODV v2 got to be what it is, and then explain why it's not the same as AODV, the published experimental routing protocol. And this talk about the things that have most recently were changed, and a few issues to be resolved. And I guess if it's okay, please wait until the end for long questions so I can make a coherent presentation. Anything else that needs to be added? Maybe we can add it at the end. Next slide, please. All right, so the AODV version 2 has been around a pretty good while. What happened was that we had 4 routing protocols, 2 reactive ones and 2 proactive protocols, and I think they all got published as experimental documents. And then the idea would be was to combine the 2 reactive ones and the 2 proactive ones, and then go forward. So that's sort of what happened, except in the case of the 2 proactive protocols, I think the other one that was not OLSR basically just disappeared. And the DSR folks and AODV folks worked together, and since they didn't want to, AODV had name recognition, but it was somehow felt that since there were 2 different protocols being combined, we should pick a new name, and so Ian Chakras renamed the effort to be DIMO, which I guess stands for Dynamic Mobility, and then we went forward. So that took a while, and then the DSR parts of Dave Johnson didn't continue participation very much, and some of the dynamic source routing stuff sort of well, one thing that we found out was that if you put in source routes in the packets, the additional size of the messaging can have a very deleterious effect on the performance. So that since there wasn't anybody championing that, that just didn't persist. Although it could be put back in, no problem. And then so after a while, people were wondering, well, why is it called DIMO? Why don't we just call it AODV version 2? And so that happened. And then it's for reasons that I can't clearly remember, it was sort of an acrimonious meeting, and AODV version 2 was removed from the MANET charter, but it would sort of continue to be a live document, and the co-authors agreed to have it be AODV sponsored, and Alvaro was sponsoring it for a while, and then I got essentially laid off, and COVID happened, and nobody was working on it. But in the meantime, there was this other document or other protocol called AODV Ripple that was getting developed, and it's now done. Basically, I think it's in the publication. It's been requested to be published. So that was an interesting exercise and actually educational in some ways. And then, well, just recently, I was contacted to see if there was interest in, and it came up on the mailing list about resuming some work on AODV version 2. So then I got the document and went through the normal amount of pain for something that's been sitting dormant for a couple of years. And finally, yeah, I had some interesting discussions about things that broke some of the IETF tools. But anyway, so here we are with version 4 of AODV version 2. Next slide, please. So in order to understand AODV version 2, it's probably a good idea to compare it to AODV RFC 3561 that was published as an experimental protocol. So it's really very similar, but not closely similar, I guess I would say. The way that route discovery proceeds is it's basically the same. There was a way in AODV for having intermediate routers. If they had a route to the destination, they could supply that in route reply. And it was felt that that was a little more complicated, and in order to expedite the document, it could be added later. So that was taken out. And there was another feature called expanding rings route discovery, where if you wanted to not flood the whole network and you thought the destination was nearby, you could just make a small radius of dissemination of the route request message, and so that has some value in certain situations. But that was another feature that was decided to take out. Probably one of the biggest changes to AODV was to make it conform to RFC 5444, which defines some type length value extensions to a basic message header with the message type. And I didn't go back and review this, but really it's pretty straightforward, I guess, and just a matter of conforming to the message formats that are laid out in RFC 5444. And then there's another document that defines the port number and multicast address and IP protocol number for MANET routing protocols. And so we put that in order to be conformant. I'd like to just say something about this, which is that since all the protocols are using the same port number, well, you have to be, careful about that. But this was part of an effort that essentially I requested, more than 10 years ago now, to allow some sort of combination between proactive and reactive protocol operation. And I still think that's a really good idea, but but it would need work, to put it mildly. Anyway, so that's a possibility. Then there's long after the initial work was done on AODV version 2, there was additional emphasis on security. And then this RFC 7182 was published to provide some type length value extensions to allow you to put in the integrity check vector and a timestamp. And I think there's some other features too, but I don't remember. Anyway, so since that was designed, and since we wanted to have some end-to-end security, that was a change to the AODV version 2. Then I guess there were various suggestions on how to improve a lot of the necessary features of the protocol, and we just followed the suggestions. But I guess one of the more important things that was done was to allow metrics not to be used that were not hop count. And everybody knows that hop count is a lousy metric. And there's actually a lot of things about that. For instance, if you're running a simulation and you're using hop count, you can really get some wrong answers. So anyway, now there's not a problem to use alternate metrics for an AODV version 2, but this is something that actually needs a work in the, you might say, other direction, which is to make a list of the metrics and allow that the metric type to be put in. And so I have to make sure that's correct. So one thing that OLSR did was to make a lot of definitions about multiple interfaces, and some of that work was adopted into AODV, and basically also using compatible nomenclature for the data tables and so on that allow you to keep a clean separation between the data necessary for managing the multiple interfaces. And also, it was possible to have one IP address assigned to multiple interfaces, and that took a bit of work. And as I mentioned, the end-to-end integrity checks were enabled. It's for an ad hoc network, at least the way we were imagining it. It's possible to imagine that the network would have multiple points of connection to a larger local area network or internet itself. And so in order to do that, we had to be real careful about the meaning of the sequence numbers. But I didn't mention it, but AODV uses the destination sequence number algorithms that were put into DSDV 30 years ago. Holy smokes, time flies. Anyway, so that destination sequence number allows for a pretty solid way to avoid routing loops. And so all that does filter down, but when you get down to multi-homing, you have to be sure that you're counting the sequence numbers from the same space of, and it's possible that with different connections to internet, that can be, you have to be careful about it. And basically it matters which the connecting routers is providing the sequence number. We took out hello messages, and another sort of valuable feature called local repair was taken out. And all of these things that were taken out, the idea was that, well, maybe not for hello messages, but for local repair or expanding ring search and so on. The idea would be that after the base document was published, then then they could be put in as supplementary documents. But the other things about, for instance, alternate metrics, they really had to be part of the base protocol. That was not viewed to be appropriate for an extension document. Another change was in order to, if you have a network where there's a lot of messaging, you have to try to be a little bit more careful about which messages actually make it through. So, for instance, if you have a choice of forwarding somebody's route request and you don't know if that ever is going to establish a route versus forwarding a route reply acknowledgement back to the route reply, and that's also useful for avoiding what's the right way to think? To blacklist certain neighbors where it's only one-way connectivity. But anyway, so the important thing is to try to allow routes to be established and maintained in preference to just flooding random route requests. So that actually does help. And by the way, just in case I didn't say it, but I guess it's well known that flooding in an ad hoc network is very costly. And so anytime you can avoid doing that, that's a good idea, which was really the motivation for this expanding ring search idea. And also, well, I guess a lot of these things were built in order to reduce the amount of flooding and signaling going on in the network. Yeah. So, and then after a long time after we started working on AODV version 2, there were started to be more people interested in rigorous proofs of correctness and avoiding routing loops and so on. Now, it turns out that one thing we didn't think about very much is what happens when some of the nodes reboot and then they lose their sequence number. Well, that is a way to destroy the correctness proof for using the sequence numbers for avoiding routing loops. And it's easy to show that if you have a device that reboots and just picks up some random sequence number, then well, you're going to very likely have routing loops, or at least you can't guarantee that they won't happen. So that's not a complete list, but it's a good list, and I think it shows sort of the evolution of what happened. So when I put recent in quotes because nothing's really very recent, since nothing happened since about 2019, I think. So that's a while ago. But anyway, I mentioned already to have handling for rebooting routers. And basically what the way of doing it was just to be really careful and have some sort of parameterized, essentially timeout for routers. After they reboot, they can do certain things like forward route requests, but they can't do anything that requires their neighbors to trust their sequence number. They have to wait longer before doing that. So that was an important change, I think. And then there was some additional security discussion, and it was requested for any time that we said that protocols should do things, we were asked to explain, well, what goes wrong if you don't do them? And so we did a lot of that. And as time goes on, and I'm sure by now there's new crypto algorithms that need to be maybe even specified as a default. If you look at just the amount of text that changed in AODV version 2, I'm quite sure that just terminology changes would be the number one thing, because as I mentioned, we tried to be conformant with what was done with OLSR, and particularly OLSR v2, and that was a lot of work. Since we put in metrics, we needed to have a new ICMP destination unreachable code that basically says you know, that destination is not reachable if you're using that metric. And so we did that. And then I just got a piece of email from IANA that says that our requested code was already been used by somebody else. No surprise. So we just have to update that. And then there's this thing called precursor list. It was put in, and I always liked it, and then it was taken out, and well, that's the breaks. But then it was put back in. And what precursors are, if you have essentially they're the upstream routers that really allow you to use a route. In other words, not you might not care about all your neighbors for a particular route error transmission. If you have an error, you only want to notify particular neighbors that the route is broken instead of having to broadcast the route errors. So that turns out to have some beneficial performance effects. And then about one of the things about bidirectionality, we allowed a MAC layer to, a lot of MAC layers enforce bidirectionality. And so we allowed that to help us out for that. Next slide, please. All right, so this came up on the mailing list, and I would say there was a lot of discussion and question about whether AODV version 2 is implementable. And this puts me in a particular situation because I'm not really writing a lot of code these days. Well, I guess I could try to do more, but it's not likely. So so that means that I don't have an existence proof to show you that it can be implemented. All I have is my own experience and the experience of people I worked with that lead me to strongly believe that it's implementable. And you know, I had also time in IEEE, and so I'm pretty familiar with a lot of implementation issues. But you know, since I don't actually have it, I can't prove it. After publishing revision 4, I got a timely email back from IANA asking about the registries for metric type and the address type. So that I'll just have to figure out what to say about that. And then, as I mentioned, we needed to have an updated code for the destination unreachable. Chris Dearlove pointed out that this has been published as RSC 7859, so congratulations on that. One thing about AODV Ripple was that it allows for asymmetric routing, and this is a non-trivial change to the protocol, but it's very cool. And so if there is interest in working group to have asymmetric routing, then we know how to do it, and it could be done. Probably take a couple of months to do it, but I'm happy to try it. Over the years, and particularly, I would say thank you to Alvaro Ratana. He did some really great reviews on the document and made a lot of observations that we're happy to adopt. But I need to go back and make sure that all that stuff really has been, all the comments really have been addressed. I'm about 75% confident, but in this case, 100% is needed. And I guess if this document is adopted by MANET working group, there'll be a lot of review, and it's not a short document, and so and I guess it it helps to also be familiar with RSC 5444 and 7182, and possibly even stuff I don't even know about since I've been not active in the working group for a while. So So that's sort of it. I don't know if how to say it the right way, but I'm willing to. I think AODV is a terrific protocol and has, well, just a slight digression. I didn't make a slide about it, but it depends upon the degree of connectivity of your network. If you have a network that's like there's only a few sources and destinations. Let's say you had 1,000 nodes, and for any particular source, it only ever needed to talk to 5 other ones or 6 other ones, except for maybe a few server nodes that had a lot of clients. Well, that's a relatively sparse connectivity graph. But if you have another kind of network where practically all the sources need to talk to practically all the destinations, then that's pretty dense. And so if you try to maintain all the routes in such a network like that is in a reactive fashion, you run into trouble quickly, and it turns into not being scalable. So anyway, the point is that there are networks that have this feature of being relatively sparse in interconnectivity graph, and for those, a reactive protocol is a good thing. And so that's why I think that AODV version 2 would have a place as a published protocol. So that's the end of that digression. Next slide, please. All right. Well, at this time, it is 1:12 in the morning. I'll be happy to field some questions, but I'd also be very happy for questions that require a bit of thought and maybe even looking up things to allow to put those questions on the mailing list and have a better discussion there. So, questions?
Yeah, thanks for your presentation, Charlie. We can allow, I think, a few short questions, but indeed, longer discussions need to go to the mailing list.
So I have a question for you, Ronald. You
Go
were
ahead.
there for the whole shebang, the whole MANET rechartering and the document reorganization back in the early days. Did I present to you and the group a reasonable summary of what happened?
I have to confess that maybe 10 years ago, I was not always paying as much attention as I should have.
Well,
But
you're excused.
but yeah, so many things happened, and there were so many discussions in that time that I think they cannot be captured in a single 15-minute presentation. But yeah, I think you got the gist of it pretty much.
Okay. Well, it's hard to be objective about all these things, really, and especially when you have a lot of personal effort at stake. So I just wanted to get your opinion. That's all.
Yeah. And I will review version 4 myself. So and go back to some of the old mailing list discussions and see if they still apply or not.
Well, any comments you have will be greatly appreciated.
Abdul Salam, go ahead.
Yes, regarding this, I will thank Charlie for his presentation, and I was always following the meetings, and maybe now for these 10 years, but I was disappointed for the removal. In his presentation, he said that the removal, he doesn't remember how it happened. But I will ask the ADs that this removal of one important document, which is for the working group, it may even close up the working group. So I asked this on the mailing list, why was it removed or how? Even I remember that one of the co-authors, he's from England, okay, or from UK. He was disappointed, and I had seen his email on the list, or maybe he sent it to me. So this is important that when it's removed, we should know how things remove and come back. If my, let's say in the future, I send to IETF and it's accepted and adopted, what's the mechanism it's removed or not removed? This should be discussed maybe. I was interested to discuss with the chair of IETF, but I didn't want to do it until I see one presentation or the authors say something about this. But anyway, this is my comment. Usually my comment is I support this document to be added in the charter, and I hope it will, because even the way it was removed, I don't think it was right. Thank you.
All I will say about this for now, it was the decision of the then chair, Justin Dean, to say this cannot be standards track in its current form. It could have continued as experimental, but I think at that stage the authors gave up, or a bit later maybe. The other chair at the time, Stan Radcliffe, had his name on the document as an author, although he may not have contributed very much. So he recused himself from making that decision. But Justin Dean decided that there were too many unresolved issues at the time. So we have to go back. But Christopher, do you want to add something or have a question?
I was just going to say, I think going back.
We cannot hear you.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
I don't want to put anybody on the spot, but I see Rick Taylor's out there. He might have an idea about it.
Yeah, but I was going to give the floor to Christopher for a question, but we cannot hear his audio.
Okay.
Audio not working in the chat. Okay. Yeah. So Rick, do you care to comment or rather not? Or maybe he's not paying attention, because I saw that he was just sending emails on the DTN list. Oh, yeah, Rick, go ahead, please. Sorry for that.
Hi guys, sorry, I was trying to unmute my audio. Can you hear me? Hello?
You're very faint.
My audio volume is very low. I'll put it in chat.
That's fine. Priyanka?
Hi, I'm Priyanka. Am I audible? Yes, right. So my question was that AODV v2 is still a proactive protocol.
Reactive.
Reactive protocol, sorry. Do we think in the MANET working group you're gonna incorporate, let's say, the new AI/ML optimization techniques into this kind of protocols? Charlie?
I hear your voice, but I didn't hear what the optimization technique was.
Yeah, I don't have the optimization technique at the moment, but I was just wondering if this MANET working group and Charlie, you were interested in incorporating those newer techniques?
Well, I have a easy answer for that, which is yes. But just to expand on it a little bit, for any particular optimization technique, we have to see how it fits. And if you have a particular thing and you want to help to incorporate that into the protocol, well, actually, that word optimize is one of my favorite words, and I really, really like whenever we can improve the performance, as long as it, what can I say, doesn't burden the average performance. So yes, I am. But if the document is adopted as a working group document, then in a way those decisions are out of my hands, and then my job is just to follow whatever the working group says.
Thank you, Charlie.
Since we have only 9 minutes. Okay, Rick read your comment in the chat. Rick is saying, I have no real comment on the history. However, I do see AODV v2 as a useful concept. I have concerns whether it is standards track yet, but definitely a protocol type I would like to be worked on. I see crossover into DTN routing use cases as well. Yeah, perhaps. I would like to leave it at that and take further discussion on this to the mailing list, because we've only 8 minutes left and we still have an agenda item to go. So,
Alrighty, well, thank you very much for giving me time, and next time I hope it's not after midnight. So I'll hopefully see you guys in the future.
well, the next IETF is in Vancouver, so that should be more close to your time zone, or exactly in it. But thanks for for staying up for this.
No, you're welcome. Good night.
So fairly quickly over the charter discussion. I cannot even read this. Oh yeah, there's a thing there. There's a monitor in front of me, but this view is blocked. Ah, clever. Thank you. No, that's fine, but you can watch that. This slide has been shown in earlier meetings already. So we've done DLab. We are almost done, as discussed before, with the credit-based flow control drafts. Statistics for traffic classification-based statistics were never undertaken, although we did do the traffic classification itself as part of the flow control scheme. Multicast was never really done. Some ideas were discussed at IETF 114, I think it was in Philadelphia, in a combined session with the ROLL and the Babel working groups. The point has been made specifically by Rick Taylor that there are proprietary multicast solutions below the IP layer out there. But I would counter that with the argument that you may want to federate several of these proprietary solutions, then you need some sort of overlay. So I think it's still, I would personally still be interested, but I cannot do it on my own, so that nobody else sees anything in it. It's probably not going to happen. Yeah, the challenges and best practices for deploying and managing. We don't expect anybody to come forward and tell all their secrets on how they do it. Then there's a sort of an implicit work item, not singled out as a work item, but mentioned nonetheless. Maintenance of OLS RV2, and I read maintenance as maintenance and extensions. So that should be carried over into a new charter. Donald improved the wording of changing no-brainer to obvious. Thank you for that. And I try to incorporate a few suggestions, ideas from Christopher Dearlove in a recent email. I think it was Saturday or Sunday that he sent that. So we could do an informational document saying how we could use OLS RV2 with some lesser known features. So OLS RV2 in its current form to accommodate specific use cases. Christopher mentioned responsive networks, stabilizing networks. Don't think we can go into that now, but it would be something to elaborate on the mailing list. Hybrid proactive reactive operation by extending OLS RV2. How much of an overlap that would give with AODV v2, I cannot foresee at the moment. Hybrid proactive DTN operation would be interesting. Better MPR selection or heuristics. I don't know to what extent that is a local thing or if there's any protocol action involved there. An older point, and this is based on experience, is guidance on OLS RV2 restart, where one of the nodes restarts and then cannot enter the network anymore. That's a problem that has been experienced.
So just a note, there's been some comments on the list to your points, but we're going to run out of time. So
yeah, I cannot see chat or at the moment. How are we doing for time? How many minutes? 2 minutes. 2 minutes. Okay. I'll skip over this. These are potential new work items. DLAB maintenance and extensions, obvious. Babel maintenance and extensions, obvious. Babel for IEEE 802.11, presented by Donald at the previous session. Is for discussion, but interesting. Energy efficient routing in MANET is probably disturbed work. New approaches to multicast. Forget the bitstring based. I've been thinking about that. I thought I had a brilliant idea until 2 days later, and I found that it was fatally flawed. Federation, I already mentioned. I'll skip over the management stuff. Reactive routing protocol, just presented by Charlie. Yeah, I think we should at least look into this and specifically look at the issues slide of Charlie's presentation and see if we see a good probability of resolving those issues. Hybrid, already mentioned for OLSR v2. An update of RFC 2501. Personally, with no chair hat on, I don't see. Yeah, I don't see what we would gain from it. Okay. Let me, yeah, and the other topics. So that's the end of this list and the end of the presentation, almost. The one point that I still want to make is if we choose to adopt something, then there should be people volunteering to do the work. Abdul Salam, go ahead.
Yes, what's important for me to know the time slot, or how, what's the milestones, the timing for when will we reach a charter. As we heard from the AD, he doesn't want any new item coming until reach charter. Now we need a plan. At least we know in 1 month, 2 months we will reach, because we have discussed this many times, and I don't think we should go forward only after we reach charter. So when will the chairs think that it's more suitable for them or for us all? So please, this is very important for us.
That all depends on the amount of discussion on the mailing list and whether we can come to a good set of items for a new charter, I would think. And
I mean, in my experience, it's the drafts come first, the people that support the drafts, and then the charter is built around supporting that. We don't go out and define a charter without that that work involved there. So just talking about we could go this way, we could go that way, I don't see. We need work, participation, and drafts, and that will drive the charter. So there's plenty of options to move the charter forward.
Charlie is requesting.
Charlie, go ahead, but we may be cut off because we're officially out of time.
Oh, well, I just wanted to say that I can work on the draft, and I think it's actually nearly done unless new features are added.
Okay, I'm reading some comments from Christopher on the chat. Point taken about the IPR, Christopher.
Okay, we're probably over time. So
Yeah.
we're gonna wrap up.
Okay. Reading the comment by Andrew Cooks. Yes, there is some interest from some radio vendors. For instance, one radio vendor supported the adoption of the new DLab drafts, the physical layer oriented DLab drafts, I should say. I know of at least one other radio vendor that has a DLab implementation, although it's a pre-standard thing. It's not really compatible with 8175, as far as I know. Okay, this was the MANET session for this meeting. I think we will have another session in the next IETF. In the meantime, do get active on the mailing list and comment on the ideas thrown out here. And then hope to see you in Vancouver, either in person or remotely. Thank you for your participation. And we're done.